Today we continue with our scripture reading through the Gospel of Matthew, which is guiding us for a number of weeks as we approach the season of Lent and ultimately the mystery, the inner truth that is Easter, the power of resurrection. So Matthew is guiding us at this time through many of the most essential teachings of Jesus Christ. The chapters of 5, 6, and 7 of the Gospel of Matthew are like Jesus' whole teaching in a nutshell, especially containing the Beatitudes and what is known as the Sermon on the Mount. But today, we continue with Jesus teaching the people in a very bold fashion. He recalls for them the truth that they know by tradition, their tradition as a people, and he transforms it or lifts it into a greater vision. You're familiar with the command to the ancients, do not murder. I am telling you that anyone who is so much as angry with a brother or a sister is guilty of murder, of killing. Carelessly call a brother idiot, and you just might find yourself hauled into court. Thoughtlessly yell stupid at a sister, and you are on the brink of hellfire. The simple moral fact is that words can kill. This is how I want you to conduct yourself in these matters. If you enter your place of worship and, about to make an offering, you suddenly remember a grudge a friend has against you, abandon your offering. Leave immediately. Go to this friend and make things right. Then, and only then, come back and work things out with God. Or say you're out on the street and an old enemy accosts you. Don't lose a minute. Make the first move. Make things right with him. After all, if you leave the first move to him, knowing his track record, you're likely to end up in court, maybe even jail. If that happens, you won't get out without a stiff fine. So Jesus called the people to reconciliation, to make things right. Today, we continue our lesson series for February on Job, the character in the book of Job. That's pretty obvious, but sometimes we can get a little sidetracked. I was recalling in elementary school when we used to hold competitions. I was pretty smart, and I made a lot of points for the team in those games where we were put into two teams and we answered questions and made points. So I thought surely they would forgive me when we got to the game-winning point, and once again it was my turn, and I was asked, who composed Brahms' Lullaby? And I froze and I couldn't answer. So it reminds me, who's the character in the book of Job? Don't freeze up. It's Job. So today my lesson is entitled, Can We Give Thanks When We See No Blessings? Satan himself, in the prologue that we shared last week, the opening of the whole account of Job, Satan posed this question to God: how long will Job fear, honor, revere, praise you if he loses his wealth, family, and health? Oh, that adversary, which is what at that time in history Satana in the language meant. Not so much the devil that we speak of in today's culture, at least many people, a personification of evil. Satana at that time was considered the adversary, the one who pushes back, and in this case, the one who was pushing God, saying, "You're wonderful, Job. You say he's the best on the entire earth, so righteous, always grateful, always doing the right thing. You've blessed him with unbelievable wealth. I outlined that to you last week. All the possessions of Job." So the adversary says to God, if I take all of that away, will he still be grateful? Will he still praise and honor his source? So there begins our question. I recounted last week, and I like it so much I'll remind you of it. Myrtle Fillmore wrote in a letter, it's contained in the book entitled How to Let God Help You. When he of the cloven hoof appears, count it all joy. Don't be disturbed by the temporary disorder. See it as the efforts of soul and body to make adjustments, bringing to the surface things that need attention, and the baptism, the outpouring of Spirit. One of the inspirations for this series of lessons is a book that was written by Rabbi Harold Kushner in 1981, a very popular book. And he gave a little twist in the title of that book. Commonly, people look at the book of Job and think, well, even though it's the longest story, the longest drama in our Bible, also considered to be the longest, most complex literary piece working with this idea of suffering that is known from the ancient world. Really a completely unique document. And the most central question is why bad things happen to good people. Throughout the Middle East at that time, there was a great concern with why would the innocent have to suffer. The wicked, as they said, well, they deserve their suffering. But the innocent, why must they suffer? Well, Rabbi Kushner, in a very subtle way, kind of gives us a clue in the title of his book to his entire thesis on this subject. And his title is not why, but when. When bad things happen to good people. And he pointed out, as we looked at last week, a three-part riddle that we must at least try to consider if we're going to have any understanding of the story, the journey of Job. This three-part riddle contains these elements. People at that time, Job, his friends, his culture, and really all the way up to modern times, hold these 3 points. But the riddle is, Job's suffering throws our ideals into turmoil. The 3 ideals: God is all-powerful and causes everything that happens in the world. Nothing happens without his willing it. Principle 2, God is just and fair and stands for people getting what they deserve so that the good prosper and the wicked are punished. 3, Job is a good person. Well, Rabbi Kushner suggests that as long as Job is blessed by God, we can hold these 3 beliefs without any contradiction. But the story is about Job's trials, his suffering, his experience. Remember last week I accounted for you that in the very beginning of the story, Satan is given the option by God to test Job. And in quick succession, Job learns from messengers that all of his vast wealth in livestock has been either destroyed or carried off by thieves, that his children, his grown children, have all perished in natural disasters. And if that weren't enough, Job himself loses his health. His body is suddenly covered with painful boils, and he is in physical agony. So he's sort of lost everything. But yet he will not give up his piety, his honor, his respect, his thanksgiving toward his God. So Rabbi Kushner suggests, as long as everything's good, we don't have a challenge. Can any of you relate to that? I can. As long as everything's going smoothly in my life, well, I don't have to think very deeply or very hard. It's all just dandy. But when the trials come, then we begin to question our beliefs. We may ask ourselves, how does this relate to our unity principles? Do they pose the same contradiction? And if so, how do we deal with it? Well, you may have already thought, well, these principles the rabbi outlines sound pretty much like our basic foundation. We said it this morning in our opening statements of faith. God is all-powerful. God is omnipotent, good. Job is God's creation, and Job is good. But yet Job is suffering. So looking at this riddle, the writer who put this ancient story into its Hebrew form probably, accounts vary, but somewhere in the area of 500 to 400 BC, before the time of Jesus Christ. So let's say 2,500 years ago that it was put into its Hebrew form of the story. And in it, Job's friends come to console him in all of his trouble. Have you ever had friends come or try to console you in your times of trial? Well, in this story, Job's friends really bring to mind that old saying, with friends like you, who needs enemies? They meant to help. Their intention was to console and comfort him. But they simply didn't know how to deal with their belief system and what Job was going through. They came from far and wide. And as was the tradition at the time, we read it last week in the opening, when all this trouble began, when Job lost everything, he tore his robe, which was a symbol of grief. And so his friends come, and they all immediately tear their robes in two. We'll suffer with you. We'll go through this with you. But then they began to say their piece, their helpful words. Sometimes we encounter this when we have lost a job, or we have had a difficult situation, or certainly when we've gone to the funeral of a loved one or family member. People try to console, and they try to help you find meaning in the situation. They'll often say, well, James, so-and-so's in a better place. Another one, I knew this when my own mother passed at 96. Well, we can't be too sorry. Think of the long life that she had. Many of these challenges. Oh, you've lost your house by fire. You've lost your job. Well, God moves in mysterious ways. There's a wonderful lesson and opportunity. That famous cliche, an opportunity for growth, is often thrown into the mix of trial and difficulty. Or, as we often say in unity, you must remember divine order is at work here. Well, yes, there is truth in these principles and statements from a higher realization. There is truth. But we must remember when we seek to console or support a friend that if they are in grieving or suffering, it's not time for a theology lesson. It's not time to say, well, let me tell you what you're going to learn from your trials and suffering. Let me tell you what you should do. Because only the individual can make the discovery of opportunity in a painful situation. We cannot tell them what to do. Really, the most important thing we can do is to be present with them. Years ago, when I was in ministerial training, and it was my time to do my hospital chaplain work, I was sent right into the fire, so to speak, of a large family. Already 30 members of the family had come together in the waiting room. The individual was in the emergency room, not responsive. Later, I would find out from the medical staff that the individual they considered was brain dead. But nobody was talking to the family. So they were just left to wonder, what was going to happen? What will happen with Mother? Hours and hours went by. We waited and waited. And finally, hospital staff came and asked the 2 teenage daughters, who were really the only legal authority for their mother, if they were willing to donate her organs. Well, this was the first time that the staff had even approached the subject that their mother would not recover. Well, I was tempted over those many hours with no support from the hospital staff. It was just Chaplain James and this large family. To think, what can I do? What can I say? What unity principle, what teaching would be helpful here? How can I take away or alleviate their suffering? But somehow I knew it was not the time for a unity class. It was not the time for me to tell them how they should be feeling. So we just stayed. And after about 6 hours or so, the daughters came to the realization that their mother had passed and that they were willing that her organs be donated. And members of the family, late at night, began to leave. And the matriarch of the family, an aunt, came to me and said, "Oh, thank you, thank you." And I was thinking inside, for what? Like Job's friends, I hadn't shared all the right answers, told them what they should do. And I said, "Well, I didn't do anything." And this woman said, "All these hours, you stayed with us. When no one from the hospital would speak to us, you never left us." It was a great lesson for me as a soon-to-be ordained minister that the most important thing in the time of trial and suffering is to help the individual know that they're not alone, to be with them. However, Job's friends didn't take that approach. They wanted to be helpful. They wanted to fix things for Job. They wanted to help as long as they could maintain their belief system God is all-powerful. God is good and just. And Job is a good person. But with all the suffering, you can already guess. Job's friend said, "Now wait a minute, Job. If all this pain and suffering has come to you, well, surely you must have done something to deserve it. There must be some reason that God is doing this to you." Well, then Job would go on and have his explanation, insisting in a way that was almost self-righteous, holier than thou, but yet it was the factual truth. Job had done nothing but honor and praise his God and treat people in his world kindly and appropriately. So that argument didn't seem to work. Job was good, but yet he was suffering, apparently being punished. So his friends took another approach. They said, well, if God is all-powerful and God is good and just, and yet you're suffering, then there must be, you can hear it, must be a reason. There's an opportunity. You're going to learn something. Last week I attempted to sing that song, Farther Along. We'll understand it. Farther along, we will know why. So they tried to counsel Job. Well, we can't quite see the answer here, but if you're patient, this will all clear up eventually. One day things will all come right. You must trust God. But Job was convinced in righteousness, in what was true. True as if before a court of law. So he continued in his challenge. A challenge so powerful that he had a dialogue with God. His friends thought this blasphemous, to dare question God. Why are you doing this to me? I demand an answer, was Job's approach. And his friends were, wait, Job, calm down. You need to give up your piety and self-righteousness. How dare you question the infinite? Well, they tried, Job's friends, they tried to press all their points to keep their belief system intact. Their friend was good, yet he suffered. There must be a reason. There's an opportunity for growth through this suffering, through this trial. They may have even counseled him with the popular saying these days that you hear, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Or they may have even attempted to make Job feel better by saying, you think you've got problems? Let me tell you about mine. The old diversion tactic. You think your flu's bad? Well, when I had it, my temperature was 125. So they tried everything. Well, let's divert to a modern story. Here's a fun one. A man had been married for over 30 years. He returned home one evening and found his wife packing. What in the world are you doing? He asked. I can't handle it anymore, she replied. We've done nothing but fight, argue, complain, and bicker at one another. I've decided to leave. The man stood in shock and bewilderment as his wife walked out of the house, out of his life. Suddenly, he dashed to the bedroom, pulled out a suitcase out of the closet. Running outside, he yelled to his wife, "I can't handle it anymore either. Wait for me. I'll go with you." But there is a little truth, a little idea in that story. Our lesson today, can we give thanks when we see no blessings, was not only hinted at or declared in the beginning of our story by Satana, the adversary, saying, well, it's well and good when these human beings on earth give God thanks for all their blessings. But when they don't have blessings, what do? Even Job's wife, in the midst of his suffering, said, "Oh, why don't you sit on the ash heap, curse God, and die? Give up your piety, your gratitude, just give it up. It's not going to work, and just get it over with." Well, fortunately for Job, he did not follow his wife's advice. So this element of thanksgiving, we can consider in a new way. Myrtle suggested to her friends in unity to count it all joy. To count it all joy. Paul is known for the statement, "In all things, give thanks." Many people rise up and say, "Oh, that's not right. What do you mean, for all things give thanks? I had an accident with my car. I'm supposed to say thanks for that?" No, that's not the statement. The statement is, in all things, in all circumstances, give thanks. What's the purpose? Why? Because thanksgiving opens the heart. And an open heart can see the possibilities in the midst of difficulties, the possibilities for healing, reconciliation, forgiveness, renewal. It can see the truth behind such statements as, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. Or, in unity, there's an opportunity for growth in this. But the way that we get to that is through thanksgiving. Jesus gave an example when he was being questioned about a blind man that he and the disciples encountered. And they said to Jesus, Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? The old why question. Jesus stopped and replied, neither the man nor his parents sinned. This is to reveal the glory and the healing power of God. How we move beyond the difficult circumstance takes us forward. The continual question of why, oh why, oh why, oh why, oh why, gets us nowhere, but stuck in Job's rut of suffering. Our great teacher of lessons in truth, an early teacher in our unity work, and even beyond unity, was H. Emily Cady, who in her Lessons in Truth and other writings, she replied to individuals who said, oh, things aren't going well. I'm having difficulty, lack, health, difficult relationships. I must be a poor unity student. She would gently shift their perspective and say, why do you condemn yourself as a poor truth student? Perhaps these situations have come to your attention so that they may be healed, brought right, as our Gospel of Matthew suggested this day. They are getting your attention so that healing and prospering can take place. None of these wise teachers, not even Myrtle, advised us to rejoice over our sufferings, our pains, our difficulties. But they did advise us to give thanks for the power always present, the potential power to transform sufferings or experiences into growth and greater good. Job uttered his famous phrase, "The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." So that's our little hint for next week's lesson. What does it mean? Job's words. Our God, our source, gives and takes away. Perhaps we want to rewrite that our own way and say, the Lord gives and gives and gives and gives and gives. That would be more comfortable, more pleasant. But how do we deal with the times when something seems to be taken away? Well, let us take a moment now to turn our attention within and to take these riddles of today into that inner secret place where the Spirit of truth may take them to a higher level than any of my words can. So I invite you to turn your attention within. And through these poetic words, I invite you to allow a vision to come before your mind's eye, an image in your soul that will speak to you in the silence. He who walked the paths of Galilee and the streets of Jerusalem has come among us everywhere on earth, though our eyes may not see him. He shares in our grief. He shares in our conflict. He breathes into us hope and faith. He seeks disciples who trust what can be seen when the heart's light opens. May we receive from him the life that sustains grace in the soul. May he speak in our conscience when we take up our work. May he be our shepherd when in the hours of darkness or sleep we rest in spirit. So as we enter a time of silence, we ask the light of the heart, the light of the Spirit of truth, to reveal within us the mysteries contained in our daily living, our work, our relationships, our supply. We easily give thanks in times of abundance. But if we are facing change, if we are facing apparent lack or difficulty, even violence or hatred, teach our hearts to be grateful, that they may open to higher truth. We ask for your guidance, O Christ within us, as we rest in the silence. O blessed Spirit, we give thanks that in all circumstance you hear our call. You provide direction for the open mind, and the compassionate heart. For this never-ending blessing, we say thanks be to God that it is so. Amen. This week, as you meet